Testing.
Yep. All right, good evening. I'd like to call to order the public meeting. The reason for this meeting is to obtain public input regarding amending ordinance 50-3, the zoning ordinance, City of North Canton, corresponding tax map to change the zoning district of the parcels situated at the southwest intersection of East Maple Street and State Route 43. From general business district to parks and institution. At this time, if you wish to speak against this, please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Chuck Osborne, 307 Fairview Street Southeast, North Canton, Ohio. First of all, I want to raise an objection. You have not met the requirements of Ohio's sunshine laws. When I came in here, there was no announcement of the meeting. You're required to present 24 hours notice. While I'm sitting here, I get an email that was sent out 3.5 hours ago announcing that, oh, we forgot this. Here's a notice of the public hearing. So I think you're going to need to scrub these two public hearings because you have not met the requirements of the sunshine law announcing this at least 24 hours in advance of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Anyone else want to speak against the proposed zoning change? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone that wants to speak in favor of the zone change? Okay, any comments or input from council? Okay. You know what? Before I adjourn this public hearing or public meeting, can I get a Laura? Can you call the roll for me, please?
Absolutely. Peters.
Here.
Revolt. Here. Fonte.
Here.
Foltz.
Here.
Weirin. Kiesling. Here. Soretta.
Here.
6 present.
Thank you. Motion to excuse member Weirin.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, well, that concludes that public meeting. At this time, we will start our second one. The purpose of this meeting is to obtain public input regarding amending ordinance 50-3. Corresponding tax map as well to change the zoning district of 2 parcels situated at 330 Schneider Street Southeast from 2-family residential RF2 to office building use OB. At this time, if you wish to speak against this proposed change, please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Chuck Osborne, 307 Fairview Street Southeast, North Canton, Ohio. I again object to this meeting. As I stated earlier, you have not provided 24 hours notice as required by Ohio Sunshine Law as notice to the public for the meeting and describing the purpose of the meeting. And as I just told you, when I came here, I knew there was no notice and I was going to speak on this. And I just got an email that was sent out at 4:15, 3.5 hours ago, that there's a public hearing. How are you going to get comments from the public when they aren't even made aware of the meeting and the purpose of the meeting? Is anybody who's an elected representative of this city going to speak up and say, yeah, we goofed up and we will reschedule this? Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. All right, anyone else wishing to speak against the proposed change? Okay, at this time, anyone wishing to speak for the proposed change? Okay, seeing none, any input from council? Administration? Okay, with that, we will conclude this public meeting and we will resume at 7 p.m. Thank you.
We did.
We did announce them, and they were, frankly, they're set on the agenda, and I'm looking for an agenda right now.
Hey, Jeff. Am I coming with you? No? What are we doing? I don't know what's going on. When did we get something? Do you remember? They announced at the last meeting that there's going to be a public meeting.
This has been announced. It was, yeah, they talked about last week. Yeah, but it was also on the calendars.
Where are you looking? Because I'm going to look.
I'm just looking at I'm looking at some back council meetings.
Oh, jeez, that's not good.
See how it passes up where that drainway runs up to the right? And the road people said it was all like drive's fault that was deteriorating, but this happens every time it rains out. This is the first time I took a video, take a photo.
Tell us that.
But,
Would that be it?
also it brings all the debris, weeds down. So even when I clean it out.
Yeah, that's me, Dave.
It's like a hiss. I think it's a rattlesnake. Who is it doing that?
The building time of Civic Center?
Superior Paving and Materials has been awarded a
The cement work was
They've
the
been
last
awarded,
one
we
I
bid it,
found.
they've been awarded it, their completion date is June 30th.
What
and
is that
They
sound?
can start tomorrow if they wanted, but they don't want to start until maybe February or March. But what we're gonna do is completely tear out that road and curb and gutter it and the sidewalk on the south side.
You find it Sunny Walk?
Come down to my house though.
We're gonna
Or
capture
are
it,
there things
But I know it was on
there'll
the
be catch
agenda.
basins and curb and gutter.
Where's last
Even then,
week's
the curb
meeting?
has a little,
It was in
yeah,
there
the
for
curb
sure.
has like a 1-inch lip.
Yeah, it was announced. I know we announced it at the last meeting too. That we were last
There's a huge event, maybe it might go over the ditch. Yeah, all those ditches.
I just didn't want mine to be the first catch basin, so that we get everything.
Right, right. That's good, yeah. Yeah, no, I'm glad you came in, yeah, we got it, we awarded it a month ago. And we bid it, if the contractor wanted to do some work, they could. They said, no, we're probably gonna start in February or March, the completion date is June 30th. I said, "Okay, it's good."
So I just try to clean it up.
Yeah, and I'll say something.
We have Wi-Fi. say that? No, I'm certain that's what it is, because it's all existing already. Yeah, it would be a future thing.
Because you remember they split it. It wasn't just all one. They split it on the phase 4. Was this. And then what they presented as zoning was a small part they asked us to have phase 4.
I don't remember, but I just know there's like 21 lots. Okay. And there's an additional section next to it.
So that's from me. Didn't come in there from anybody. Too nefarious, I guess.
Engineering dictates that.
That's how I started.
I won't do it tonight.
Hopefully it'll take.
Sure. I got it on Friday. Friday?
I've had good luck.
So Friday?
Time to give it TLC.
Just for
She's got a nice sunny off.
Today?
Yes, she does.
Oh, she wasn't working?
One of 27 days.
Oh, my God, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, she's good. She's a good kid. Yes.
Regular and the second one.
Which actually, I printed that out here.
Your lists are on the list.
She's on vacation.
All electronic. Okay.
No, he's in a different place.
Okay.
For all the people that have asked for it. So,
Yes, I got home and did that. I did see it. I see it.
and it's the second.
The second PDF.
Yes. This is
You sent it to my city board.
especially as Twitter. Stacy sent me real Ryan sent me a box and I was like, maybe it's maybe it's 12 something. I still have a little bit of Bruce YouTube.
I remember seeing it. I ordered it myself.
Laura does it, but yeah, I receive it. She sends it to us first. You get that grant. Well, I have to see that she sent it. I don't see what she sends. Yeah. I see what she sends to us. We had scheduled that as first, and then she sends it to the well. It might be on our city's website. Matter for me, a big roadway.
Okay. We're good? Ready?
Different for me.
Hey, Laura?
Not the traditional,
Hey, Laura?
design bid, build it.
Hey, Laura? Are we good? Okay.
So this came out Friday. Peters.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting, Monday, November 18th, 7 p.m. Laura, would you mind calling the roll, please?
Sure. Peters?
Here.
Soretta? Kiesling? Weirin? Here. Foltz?
Here.
Fonte?
Here.
And Revolt?
Here.
Seven
All right,
present.
thank you. At this time, Finance and Property Chairwoman Warren.
Glasses on. Okay, Laura, I will let you talk about this one and the garbage service fund, and we'll move on to the one that we've talked about over the number of years for the Public Defender's Office.
Sure.
Council.
The first item is just an appropriations amendment for 2019. We typically do this towards the end of each year to just kind of clean up any accounts that might be coming up a little short at year end. You have a list of those, that's attachment A on the ordinance. The most significant of those being the $50,000 for telephone and police, and that goes back to something we talked about during the budget meeting as far as working with the phone carrier to resolve some disputed bills. I believe the law director is getting to a, resolution on that soon, but I wanted to have enough money sitting there so that if they needed to pay a bill, they could do that, and then get credited back. The other significant item there is you'll see the $203,000. That's an advance from the general fund to our municipal road fund. That's for the East Hill project. We will pay the cost of that project in the spring, so there's a purchase order open for that, and then we'll get reimbursed by the county and pay that money back to the general fund. So this is just a short-term loan so that the fund has money to cover that purchase order. And then the last one, the $22,000, is for the garbage fund. That's just due to Kimball's price went up, and so we pay them a percentage of the fees charged to the customer, so we need to increase our line item as well. Any questions on any of the smaller items that I didn't cover?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff,
Yes.
were we going to talk about the budget?
Yeah, would you like to amend the agenda
Yes.
to include that? Yes. May I have a motion to amend the agenda to include discussion on the budget?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. Chairwoman Warren.
So I think, I know we passed the budget, just started the process last week, but I know there were some items we had talked about. And some of those we were looking at were some different salary line items. And we had asked Laura to give us salaries for different positions throughout administration and just really all across the board. So I think we were just going to take this opportunity to kind of talk about some of those positions and the reason for some of the increases and just kind of understand it a little bit better. Any more thoughts on what we had talked about?
Do we have a exhibit of the salaries handy, or from the last meeting we have? You're talking about those?
Yeah, we do have what was prepared for us. So I think the biggest question is, and I guess this goes to Pat and David, as the budget comes from, that side of the aisle. The Deputy Director of Administration and Development, realizing that's you, Kathy, but I'm speaking of the actual position. It appears as if you're asking for a 25% increase. And then there is one of the administrative assistants, you're asking for a 12% increase. And when you look down the line at all the increases we're giving, everybody else, they're all 3, 3, 3, 3, or 0. So we're having a hard time justifying a 25% increase in salary or a 14% increase in salary, realizing that you do have a range, but you're taking them right to the top of the range, and in this day and age, that doesn't give you much room to move. So we're just trying to get some thoughts around that.
Well, I appreciate that we're being afforded this opportunity to speak. I will address the first one, which is Kelly Hart. She is currently an administrative assistant. She's being moved to a different position, administrative specialist. Administrative specialist pays a higher pay scale than administrative assistant. So she has been doing that job presently at the administrative assistant pay level. She has performed above and beyond in that capacity, and I believe that it warrants her being moved to the administrative specialist position.
So what is she doing more as a specialist versus?
Administrative clerical position is, administrative assistant position is more just strictly a clerical position, where we would be just typing up documents, processing legislative requests, preparing contracts, that type of duties. Administrative specialist, and we created that position back when the exempt ordinance was done, and at that time we were anticipating that this person would be more like an operations manager, that they would actually run projects and events, and so that's what Kelly has done. She has taken over all of the events, managed all those, run those meetings, run those events.
Like what's an example?
Winterfest is being expanded for its
Show me
100th anniversary. So the Winterfest is being expanded for its 100th anniversary. She runs that event. 4th of July, Memorial Day, Veterans Day, all these are events plus 720, just all the stuff that needs to be done, coordinated through the administration with the other outside entities. That is one of the things that she's in charge of.
Did you say Kelly?
Kelly.
That's her duties?
Mm-hmm.
If I could add, in a lot of
Please.
organizations, you have an administrative level, then you have a senior administrative level. There's a vast difference between the administrative support to maybe someone who is an administrative level supporting the CEO or a higher level executive in a company. So the way it's been for years here is just one level. Everybody comes in here, and you're all right here. And there's a vast difference between some people that are more of a receptionist, answering a phone, doing some basic technical stuff, maybe a Word document. Then there's the higher level that can create really complex Excel worksheets, more complex documents. Kelly comes from a legal background. She has been preparing legal documents for years, so she can kind of do those higher level. That's who we fall to when we want a higher level admin. So it was sort of like an ability to have a promotion through natural progression. She had to come in here and be a receptionist / administrative assistant at this level, but then when you saw this skill set, it just warranted to say she can do so much more. There's so much more capability there. So I think that's where that creation of that higher level administrative specialist position seemed warranted. If we want to
With
get
the
there.
new person then that you also want to bring in that's going to have the shared responsibilities, how will that differ?
Could you repeat the question?
So with the new person that you want to bring in, and I think that's Ben,
Mm-hmm.
what is going to be different with what Ben does? Sharing between the three departments.
Ben's, that role was envisioned a year ago. We didn't fill it. We couldn't find a qualified person. We think we have at this time. This was the position that we were sharing between the city council and the administration. If we split those duties in half, that put the administration back into a staffing level that it had when I came here. So getting an extra half a body. So what will that person do? I'm not sure. I have ideas on what they could do for council, but that's totally council's call. But as far as the administration end of it, I think he's demonstrated already the kinds of things that we would have him do. And that has to do with research and development of legislative ideas and projects. So he's done the video camera registration program that was the mayor's initiative, the new sidewalk policy program and brochures, and putting that program together. He's working on rental registration right now on that, and right now I had him for 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays through the end of his semester. So we would like to bring him on next year as a paid intern. I'd like to bring him on as a full-time employee, provided that when he graduates, that he chooses us. I'm sure he'll have a lot of opportunities. I met with his overseer, supervisor, Dr. Coop Berry, who runs the internship program at Walsh, and talked about expanding some of those opportunities for others. But as it relates to Ben, he is definitely the star of their program.
Yay, Ben.
If I can add as well, Kelly Hart also provides administrative support for the law department. As may be required. An example is today. We were looking over various contracts, various versions of contracts, and we probably used Ms. Hart for the greater part of the morning trying to get that bit of issues resolved. So she's just outside my office, and she's always helpful. in those types of things and helping with the Microsoft Office, different types of tasks and so forth that she brings with her background in the legal field. So it's certainly an additional assistance to the law department as well.
Patrick, I have a question, and you and I have discussed this, not at length, but briefly. Being this is the mayor's budget, we have a new mayor incoming, and there's been a time where you sat with him to kind of bring him up to speed. You made him aware of the budget.
Yes, we've spoken about each one of these individually and have his approval for that and his very much his support for the next one that we're going to talk about.
Okay.
Thank you.
So as it relates to the Deputy Director of Administration and Development, and let's keep in mind the history here. So council created this position in November of 2016, and you established a pay range or line for that. Council, once that was passed and signed into law, the mayor reached out and filled that position. That position was me. And that position paid $75,000. I served in that capacity for just shy of 1 year, about a week shy of a year. And Mr. Grimes resigned, or retired, I should say, and the mayor appointed me to that position, and council confirmed that. So the vacancy was created, and I believe it was not until March that I appointed or asked the mayor to approve Catherine moving into that position as the deputy director. So she assumed all the responsibilities that I had, and then some. So when I was the deputy director, Mr. Grimes kept the HR function within his realm. And the projects and legislation and initiatives with the council were moved to my jurisdiction, as well as the economic development initiatives. So as it was explained to me, you know, the administration takes a lot of time handling individuals, 92 employees, there's a lot to do. So when we reassigned this role, I kept certain things for myself. Handling the direct reports was not one of them. So that is one of the major tasks that the deputy does, in addition to all kinds of other fielding inquiries with the council and moving projects and stuff forward. So as you know, she's been handling the IT once the contract was awarded, overseeing that contract with AtNet and making sure that everything is going well there. She has taken on this council move engineering relocation. That's her project. And in addition to other projects that she's working on that she can tell you about. So from my point of view, being the individual who's there on a daily basis, 100% of the time, seeing what she's doing and what products she's delivering, she has met the satisfaction of myself, the current mayor, and I believe the incoming mayor. And she has been working at that salary range where she's at now since March of 2018. So where we are at present is a new budget, and I believe that she should be paid what the previous male in the position was paid. But she's also earned it in spades. So I don't understand the qualms about it, I mean, council created this position 3 years ago, established the salary, you were paying that salary, and here we are. So I understand from your point of view, and I sat in your chair and understand, you know, what appears to be, you know, what is on paper, 25% or 15%.
Right.
But in this case, we have a person who's moving to a new position, and in the other, that she's doing the job that to my satisfaction, at a pay level that should be commensurate with what the previous occupant had.
I got a question. So, like, now that you explained it, it makes better sense, you know, understanding the history and everything. I think where, you know, it always shocks someone is when they see a 25% uptick versus 3 or 5 or 10, you know, percent. I get what you're saying. So is that the cap at 25%? Is that the job cap? Or is that somewhere, like, usually there's a scale, like a entry level,
the cap.
mid-range?
There are no ranges on the non-exempt.
Yeah, as it stands right now, Dom, that is the cap.
Okay,
There's no ranges.
so there is a cap?
There's just a cap.
Okay, so this would just be my only thinking. Not saying you don't deserve it, you're not, you know, your counterpart earned it, you should earn it. The question is that, like I'm just saying, if it were me working in a job, you know, I want to know there's always potential to grow. And if I'm at the max, I'm like, geez, really?
That's where the maxes are.
So that's all I was saying, just as a thinking out loud is, you know, I would think there'd be like a step up and then another step up type of thing. But what we're saying is you just want to go right at the level where Pat was when he was in that job.
I just
Is that
want to
it?
be, I do want to be compensated fairly. I mean, in a city where we have about, I think one time we ran the numbers, 11% men in the entire city. I mean, I'm sorry, 11% women. It's predominantly men. And once the director of finance and deputy director of finance are no longer with the organization, I will be the only female in any kind of a leadership capacity. It's all male driven. So it is really hard to come in every day and work in the exact same job, same title and same responsibilities that my male counterpart had and not be paid fair. It just smacks of gender discrimination. It just really feels like a pay inequality for, I don't know why. I mean, I've done more. I've written for a grant over $100,000. I am managing, you know, 14 direct reports. I do employee relations. I sit in on performance evaluations. I have people on performance plans that we're working on. I sit in disciplinary actions. I do this. I work with staffing, recruiting. I think I'm making a lot of autonomous decisions, but I just, you know, to say, yeah, it's at the cap, it is the cap of the city. It's not the cap to go somewhere else. I mean, it's, don't think that when you weight the job for the duties that I'm doing, that it's out of the range.
Kathy, nothing personal, really. I've known you for a million years.
No,
No, that's a personal thing. Listen.
Yeah,
So,
this is very objective.
Yeah.
And for
can I
doing
finish?
budgets for,
Yeah, one at a
Can
time,
I
please.
can I finish, please?
Yeah, Dominic.
Okay. So, Kathy, I see what you're doing, and part of it is, as us being not full-time, you know, we're dialed in as much as we can be, not like you guys, because you're here day in, you know, in and out, like what Pat was saying. To me, it's just like, I can make an informed decision once I have enough facts and information. This is the purpose of this call that we're having on right now. So I understand what it is you do. It makes sense to me now. But I'm just saying, you know, when you see 25%, you just wonder, like, wow, can you sustain? Will it be 25% next year or the year after? I'm not saying you're not worth it. I'm just saying these are the things that come up. So the conversation just has to be that we need to understand, like what you just described.
Perhaps was I compensated too low to begin with?
Possibly.
Daryl?
Yeah.
Council, in its infinite wisdom, established a pay range. And it left the supervisor the authority to peg a salary within that pay range. Administration is assuming a right that council has conferred upon it. So, the only remedy is for council to amend the ordinance and reduce the cap. That's your remedy. You'll need an ordinance. You have to drag the ordinance up and amend it.
We know that, like why we're asking the question. Our job tonight was to ask the questions.
I think.
And as council, and we've talked about that. From the last meeting, we also said we can change the line item on that, and Patrick can do what he wants with it. He can lower his salary, he can say he doesn't want Ben, that's up to him.
Yes.
Like, we're just asking a question. I don't think we're to this point where we want to lower that. We can
Okay.
vote on it.
Then I think we've discussed this.
Yeah.
But of course, you're the chairman, and again,
Yeah, I mean.
But let me just say this. I think Kathy has raised, or a couple of issues have been raised. I think we should all be very sensitive about equal pay. And from my experience, I think we have gotten, the taxpayers have gotten an extraordinary value from the services provided by the individual in question. We have run over the last calendar year, not one, but now 3 HR searches. If we were to outsource that, frankly, the council couldn't do it.
Well, Laura did a lot of that as well.
I understand.
Yeah.
But Kathy has played a major role in the construction and the execution of those HR searches, not to mention the other duties that she's provided. And again, I come back to this. If Patrick, as a newbie, was making X, my own personal position is, after a year, Kathy should make the same amount of money.
So, this is Dominic here. I was just saying, like, when I'm just processing everything, using common sense, it just, when you see 25%, I didn't know all the history here. She just explained it, Patrick explained it, so now it's clear in my brain what it is you do. It isn't undermining or overmining. You do a nice job. I mean, I see the social media. I think it's just important for us to understand, because I don't know if you even have a job description.
I do.
You know,
Very lengthy.
and I don't know if we've ever seen it, or do we even have it?
to you.
Yeah, I would say that's probably a good thing, just so everybody understands, because like I said, when you hear all these things you rattled off, and they're important because we're trying to move the city forward, and we need good people around us. So that's I just need to hear, you know, those comments you made, so thank you.
And if I could just address one of Dominic's previous comments that concerned of 25% pay increases ad infinitum into the future, and it's unsustainable and all that. And, you know, I would just ask you to look at my record. I think when 2 years ago, after Mr. Davis departed the city, and we restructured how we were going to run the street department, water distribution, the two that Mike Battershell and Brian Hill run, you know, we adjusted their compensation to in effect have superintendents of those departments. And then subsequently to that, it's just the standard 3%. So didn't give them, you know, another outlandish raise.
Well, you're explaining that, so that clears it up. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, we're not in it like you 24/7, right? We're doing the best we can. So all I'm saying is, when you explain it like that, it makes sense. But I'm just saying there's always the perception and the reality, and what we're trying to do is just get to the fact-finding, so we definitely get what you're saying, and we respect that. It isn't like we're trying to downplay it. We just need to understand, since we have to make decisions on stuff. That's all.
And I can appreciate
But I
that.
highly
appreciate
respect.
that.
I mean,
The 25% seems like a job, and I can see that,
Yeah,
you know,
that's all-
for
that's all it is.
taxpayers and your constituents, you have to answer to that. I appreciate that. I'm just saying to please look and see that the fact of the work that I'm doing, and it is exactly, or maybe even more of a male counterpart, and ask yourself,
Well,
does
and
it
I
seem
don't think it was
sexist?
that. We didn't know what you did, Kathy. I mean,
know,
we
it's-
need to ask, and so when we look at
Yeah.
that, and when we see a total proposed salary in 2017 of $831 for that side, and now we're looking at $1,024,000, I think we're allowed to ask those questions.
You definitely are.
So we needed to ask that. I called Patrick, and
Yeah, I didn't know you didn't see the job description when it was posted. It was out, it was public, and
no,
it
and
was on
even
the
so,
website.
I've
Yeah.
seen job descriptions here. We all do different things. I do different things. I can't say I'm compensated at my job for all it is. We don't have the money. So I guess we're lucky that in North Canton we have the money. And I hear you. You are the only female. I'm going to be the only female here too. I get it. But we have to look at what the job is and what you're doing. And, you know, we hadn't talked with Patrick about that. And I don't think, you know, everyone's calling and saying, hey, what's your job now and what are you doing and stuff. So it's great if we can just think that we can expect that we would know that, but we don't. So I think it's very important that we ask these questions. And when we see big salary ranges like that, when we talked to the finance director, she said we can't sustain that. So if we're going to be giving these 25% raises, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to have a council that agrees with that.
Well, let me say a few things here too, because there's no question you're both doing a terrific job. That is not the question here. The question is, generically, someone comes in at a position, that is what they agreed to get paid on. That is the range. And then in most companies, you get an increase based on your performance level year after year after year. So what we're saying, it's very hard for us to justify to anybody in this community, anybody getting a 25% raise. That's common sense. I'm going to answer that. You're going to answer that. It's your department. Now, I don't even.
Well, I'll be
it doesn't
happy
have
to
be a
answer it.
debate. This is just something that it's going to be on your administration kind of thing. So that's my biggest thing. You pay someone for performance. Now you're going to take her to the top of the list. What are we going to do next year to this person? And I'm using generically now. What are we going to do next year to this person when they do such a great job? Why are we going to give them a raise? They're at the top.
No, I won't get one.
Well, she won't get one because
A lot of people.
as a lot of people haven't over the years here, because you reach the top of the exempt ordinance, and that's it. The council has control. So I'm not able to push forward and put someone through with a pay increase that goes beyond that. So ultimately, it comes down to what Darrell was just saying. That's where you have the ability to change the ordinance to have it be whatever it is. And that's why you'll have, different employees making more than different department heads in other departments and all that kind of thing. But hey, you know what? It really comes down to you get what you pay for. And you can go back to the $800,000 payroll like you had, and you can pay people and get nothing done.
Oh, I don't think we've done that. We've always
No, you
increased just about everybody. Look at the scale that we have done this year. But that's a red flag because it just shot out like a red flag. So that's why we're asking questions. Managerially, why it's on you. But I think it's hard to justify that to someone that comes to me from the community and say, how could you give someone a 25% increase in pay? That's the only thing I can think of. So that's all I got to say.
The city, from my HR background and when I first joined here, I'm very shocked to see the compensation structure that exists here in North Canton. And like Patrick said, you get what you pay for. It has tied our hands and limited us at attracting top talent. It is the reason why we have turnover the way we do. We bring good people in and they don't stay long. Few years you get and then they move on to something else. And I think we have to ask why. I think we have to look at attraction, retention, motivation of employees. And that comes down to compensation. Yes, people want to be public servants and do good for the community, but you also want to earn a fair living. You have to support yourself and your family. And we do not have ranges. We just have that cap. When I go out to recruit for jobs, there's really no range in the ordinance. There's just that cap. I don't know that we've done a fair market study to say with what I do, and if you want to see the job description and look at the duties and say someone who has 14 direct reports and all these responsibilities, market that and see what that is out there. Is the cap at that 75? I'm going to say it's much higher for the HR duties that are in this position. So I think that's valuable if you guys would ever want that study done. It's something we should do for all positions in the city.
But Kathy, I think we have looked at that. We've looked at it for finance. We've looked at it for law. Like, what jobs are you saying that people have left? I guess I feel like we have a lot of department heads that have continued to stay for a long time.
Well, we have 2 that are leaving right now. And there have been, we can look at the study. I can't say off the top of my head, but you could do a retention study. You can do a turnover analysis.
Our police and fire are some of the highest. Like, I guess
some of the long-term ones are union too. Remember that.
Right.
We're talking non-exempt, non-union.
Yeah.
The other ones are,
I think council had a 50% raise not too long ago, if I recall, and everybody made a big deal about that. But I guess it's all relative, isn't it?
Is it ever?
I couldn't resist. I'm sorry.
If I can say, I think it's transitional, and maybe we should have talked about this before. So I think maybe council has some responsibility to ask these questions in an earlier stage. It doesn't mean we can't ask them anytime. But I think going back, when you look at the history of a Mike Grimes, and listen, Mike's a great person. We appreciate his years of service here. It's just transitional with Pat coming aboard, and now the other
Pat's position filled with you, Kathy, and then we're looking at another position to fill with a great future employee. I think there's just a lot of money that's moving in that direction. We just want to make sure it's the duties match the salaries, that's all. And I just think that's council's role. I mean, hopefully you don't take that personal. I've been in government a long time. There's been times I haven't had a raise for 3 or 4 years, and that's just the way it is. And you don't really see that increase anywhere in government, at least in Canton or other areas of work. So that's the point here. It isn't about a male or female filling the roles in a job description. It's about what we can afford and what our duties are going to be and what's the future of these positions and how they're going to benefit North Canton. I think you guys can intelligently discuss that. We're not going to have such a big problem with this. Shouldn't say problem, just such a big concern, I should say, because we do have to answer to our constituents. It is correct what Mark said. We look at 25%, that's a lot, and it's not mean to demeanor what you offer here to the city. That's not the point. It's just, we have to look at a bottom line. So I'm glad we're having this discussion now. Maybe it should have been an executive session, looking at stages, just to see where we need to be, because we have that right to do that. That's all I want to say.
It's a good conversation to have on the record as well. And I think everyone's right. We do have the fiduciary responsibility to ask the question. However, that responsibility doesn't stop there. In the next 2-year term, we're going to be looking at administration to drive this agenda forward, and we're going to see what the benefits are. I mean, like they say, the proof is in the pudding. I have every confidence in the leadership team to move that forward. It's also important to note, and we mentioned this earlier, that the incoming mayor is aware and does approve of this. He's had the conversation with Patrick, so I think that's important to note as well. But our job doesn't stop at this conversation.
We think you're doing a great job, Kathy. So this was just like what do you want to call it, a fact finder. So it is what it is. And just leave it there. Don't take it personal. And same for you, Pat.
Dave, you got something?
Dave, you got
When you look at the staff,
Dave.
Is your microphone?
Is your mic on? The red light. The red light has to be on.
So prematurely, knocked you out of it completely.
Yeah.
Where's the hook? Where's the hook?
Last meeting. Man. Daryl's stealing my gum. Holy cow. All right, so anyways, can we hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. One of the things when you look at salary, and this is just after being here for so many years, a large portion of the employees that are here are union negotiated salaries. And, I remember when I first started here, I would look at, for example, the police department. And when we were under really tight financial times, you would look at those first responders, and because they were the largest portion of service and expense to the city, you're trying to manage this delicate balance of having as many people as many police officers on the street as you can, and at the same time, having them be fairly compensated. Now what we've seen is a transition. So now that the Hoover Company has left, we've gotten new business in. Right now, the city's income tax is at the highest level that it's ever been in history. So then when Patrick came on, we went from this scarcity mode of employees. And Stephanie knows I've said this how many times, 116 employees down to 91. Well, then what you realize is that the people that you have working here, maybe they started at a particular wage, but now they've been here 4 years. Now there's somebody that's been in that position, or maybe they've assumed other responsibilities that isn't reflected in the job description, so they're doing way more than what they should. Just because if you have a key employee, that's an important thing. So like when Patrick started here, he was never a city administrator, but he was the assistant administrator. Then when Mike Grimes left, he was the go-to person, which was really what we had planned ahead of time. So what I'm saying is that you want to make sure you have competitive rates. We do have changes. They're appointed officials. So they work at the pleasure of the appointing authority. The city council can hire somebody that's an appointed official. You set the union workers aside, but the appointed officials, you know, they also have that higher risk of, am I going to be here next month? Or am I not? We got newly elected officials. We have new members on council. Am I going to be here or not? Should I look for another job or not? So I think along with that, there's a level of compensation in order to hire the right people. People always say everybody's replaceable, which is the truth. But I think I've mentioned this to some of you. I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, but you have the New England Patriots, right? Tom Brady's replaceable. You replace him with the second, third stringer, they're probably not going to win the Super Bowl. So if you have good people, you know, try to keep the good people. That's my thought. And try to keep things stable, because we do already have two changes, two key employees that are leaving. And so what that does is that shifts the burden now to the ones that are remaining. And it's not like you got a whole lot of, backup in this city. You know, it's not like we have multiple levels of support. So that's something to keep in mind. Now you can cut my mic off again.
Hey, I got a quick question. Is it always about the pay or the atmosphere too? Just from and being here, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, I know some people, like even work with on my team. You would think it would be the pay. Sometimes it's just more the atmosphere and how they're treated than actual pay. So I know it's probably a blend of both when you work for a city, I would assume. Of course, I'm part-time, so I don't know.
And I appreciate everyone saying I'm doing a great job. That's great. I just want to be compensated at the same rate that a male person doing the same job, same duties, same title was. Because I can't understand how that it doesn't look. I'm the only female, again, like I said, when the two other females that are in leadership roles leave, we have no diversity in the city. I'm the only female in a higher role, and I can't justify where I'm not paid at the same rate.
That's fair.
That makes sense.
Kathy, why didn't you ask that question when he hired you?
Because we hired her in as an administrative assistant.
But then when you gave her the director of deputy or whatever it is.
Yeah, because that was really, one of the things.
You wanted to move her up slowly.
Well, also, the question is, how many years have you been here at the city now?
3.
3 years. So there's a big difference when we brought her on first year and where she's at now. So it's just like Patrick, how many years have you been with the city now? 3 years. So there's a big difference when we brought Patrick in, and if we try to replace somebody that has his knowledge and his experience in the position, and now you're taking somebody that maybe has the experience that he has. Maybe, let's say you try to find a new administrator. Maybe you don't find somebody that has administrative experience. Maybe you find somebody who was an assistant administrator position. So now you got to take the risk that, God, out of all the applicants, none of them have administrator experience. So now you got to put somebody in the key position, in the key quarterback role, that has no experience. So that's the problem that we have with all the staff. Because we all know when you hire somebody, you really don't know how they're going to do until you put them in the position. And, some people, they're a bad pick. They're just not a good fit for that position. Other people you break even on, and other people, they're superstars. So, and you can't predict the future until you get them in and you let them throw a few passes and see if they can win. And then if they win, then you're thinking, man, I got to keep them because now they can go somewhere else. That's the tough part. And then the question is, you could always act big and tough and say, well, you can move on, but you really have to think, what is the market like and how hard is it going to be able to replace those two? Well, we've got 2 positions open now, but that's the challenge is training them. Who's going to train them? Who's going to train the people when they leave? That's just the nature of government. So you try to have, a succession plan, but we just don't have multiple layers of employees. So that's something to think about.
Yeah, anything else?
Nope.
Okay. All right, good conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, and that's it for finance and property, right, stuff?
No, there's item B.
You did?
We go to B.
Did you do B? Public defenders? No? Okay.
Let's do it. Make sure.
Laura, are you doing that one as well?
I can. This is just our annual contract between the city and the county public defender's office.
I feel like, didn't we talk about one the other week too? That was,
Well,
sorry, that was for indigent.
we have one with the city of Canton and one with Stark County.
Got
This is
it.
the county.
Okay. So if
Okay.
there are no questions, we'll put on the agenda.
And those are both emergency
Yep.
clauses, okay. Okay, next up, personnel and safety. We have the public record policy, and Tim, I'm going to let Tim take this one. You've been working very hard on it, thank you.
Yes, sir. Simply what we're doing is, what we have in place now is the Attorney General's model public policy. And what I'm looking at is there's been an update from the Attorney General's policy to the 2019 model policy and incorporated poster. This simply summarizes the Public Records Act, and the only difference between the Attorney General's model policy, which is endorsed by the State Auditor's Office, and our own, is that, as requested, I've removed the portion regarding fees. And so there's no fees for records.
All right, thank you. Any questions from council regarding that?
No.
Everyone good? Okay, Tim, thank you very much. Okay, next up, Street and Alley, Chairman Fonte.
This would be section number 4 in the sanctuary, and it's a newer subdivision section, which is roughly 21 lots. But basically, what we're doing is we're agreeing, subject to the law director and the engineer agreeing to the written form on an emergency, that they can create Honeysuckle Street or Honeysuckle Circle, 50-foot wide, and Dunway, 50-foot wide, with all the utilities that are necessary to complete the project, plus some landscaping. So it would be on an emergency, and I think 21 lots would be great in North Canton. Any questions?
This document essentially goes hand in hand with the recent legislation that had the performance bond and the mortgage for the confirming that the public utilities will be placed, the sidewalks, the curb and gutter. And so this plat is the document that lays out the streets. It's signed by quite a few of our public officials, the engineer, the finance director, law director, as well as county officials as well. And it's essentially part and parcel of that process in the Phase 4 development.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Rob, I just want to be clear that by accepting this plat, we are not exacerbating the storm drainage issues in the region, correct?
Correct. This is Phase 4 of the 5-phase sanctuary development, and the drainage has been figured in since Phase 1. Kind of the island area out there is where the retention and detention ponds are, as well as the ditch that flows through there. So it's already been handled. And also, the streets were just paved last week. Basically, they're done. If you go out and take a look at it, the final asphalt's there. Our office did provide the inspection of the developer's work.
Is it 21 lots?
Yes, Phase 4 is 21. Yes.
Great.
Rob, I had a question on that. At one point, didn't they split the phase?
Yes, at one point, I think Phase 4 was the fourth and final phase of the
The whole
subdivision.
corner, right.
But right, last summer when it went through Planning Commission, they did split out Phase 4, divided it in two, so now they're gonna do it in 5 phases. So this is Phase 4, the far southwest corner will be Phase 5, and they've yet to present a street layout, final plat for that yet, so.
So nothing will go on to the school, it just stays within the confines of the footprint, correct?
Right, they still have to go back through planning commission and, you know, their first crack of the street layout, lot layout, will go back through planning when they're ready to do phase 5, when the market dictates.
Okay. Good.
So we move that to the agenda, please.
All right, that will be under emergency as well. Okay. Next up, water sewer rubbish, Chairman Soretta.
Yes, I'll let Rob explain this. This has to do with the vacating of an existing water line easement up in Lake Township, so go ahead and explain.
Yeah, we had gotten a call a couple months back, 6 weeks or so ago, up in Lake Township, the St. Ives subdivision. I think it was phase 6 of that subdivision, and there's a figure that's in your packet. What had happened is the home was built in the 1990s, and there's a 20-foot water line easement along the east side of the lot. And then when the home was built, the home, basically the garage side of it, infringed in that water line easement by about, I think, 4 feet on one side and 3.5 at the back, or 3 and 4. And my understanding is when the property owner called our office, they were either looking to sell the property or to refinance, but the lending agency kind of balked at that because some of the house was in our easement. So what they had asked, what we can do is just vacate the little sliver of easement where the home infringes in the easement. And our water crew did go up, and the existing water line is not under that part of the home. It's about 2.5 feet from it. So they prepared this document for us to consider, which is just vacating 116.5 square feet of the easement, which is basically the portion of the house that's overhanging the easement.
So we're not giving away the entire easement, only and even any that keeps us from getting to our pipe.
Right. We still have full access at our pipe. All we're doing to satisfy the lending agency is simply vacating the portion of the easement where the home is located.
Questions, anyone?
Yeah, only to reinforce what Mr. Graham had said. We talked about this about a month ago and asked to have a drawing, and it was important to confirm that vacating this portion of the easement was not going to impair us should we need to come in and replace that line, and Rob's office has ensured that's the case, that they would still be able to have full access for this. It's simply that the property owner is somewhat in a bind here in trying to finance when there's a cloud on title because of our easement. But if our easement, the full effect of it is not necessary, it seems a reasonable thing to do. There are costs involved, and it is fair to ask that the property owner incur those costs. There's, of course, the recording. And because although not giving up a portion of city land, because this is in Lake Township, you're giving up a portion of city right to access a portion of that land. And in doing so, I simply recommend that you have a public meeting and simply state it when you begin the legislative process for this.
Okay. There's no need for emergency on this in any way? It's not on there, that's why I asked.
I believe I had checked it off in my original request, just to help out the property owner.
Yes. Emergency, yeah, I've got the legislation request here. Emergency was requested.
It just didn't say it on the summary here. So, okay, so let's, unless anybody else has any other questions or?
I'm sorry. I would recommend, again, because we're talking about property rights and the land, it's owned by the residents, that they should have a say. And in all the things that we do in planning and zoning, we simply don't place on emergency. And so I would recommend that for that very reason, that you don't simply so that, someone doesn't believe that we're trying to rush this through and for someone's advantage.
All right, you okay with that, Rob? then?
I'm fine with it.
Based on law, Director? Okay.
That
so let's-
way, there's no harm in giving it the additional readings.
Okay, so unless anybody has anything else, we'll move this to the agenda.
Thank you.
All right, for 3 readings. Okay, very good. Okay, at this time, I need a motion and a second to move into executive session. Reason is to consider the employment and compensation of public employees. The executive session will not be open to the public.
Motion.
Second.
Member Revolt.
Roll call.
Yep.
Yes.
Fonte.
Yes.
Peters, yes. Foltz.
Yes.
Warren.
Yes.
Kiesling.
Yes.
Soretta.
Yay.
7 yes. We are in executive session. And we'll
But do you need to say that I joined?
No, because
The main one?
you got here.
Oh, okay, so that's fine. Got it. I totally spaced it. I think when I saw you, it was.
Okay, may I have a motion and a second to exit the executive session?
Move we adjourn the executive session?
Yep.
So moved.
Okay.
No, nothing was done in the executive session.
Yeah,
if
let
I'm
the
not-
record reflect, no action was taken. Roll call vote, Revolt.
Yes.
Fonte.
Yes.
Peters, yes. Foltz.
Yes.
Weirin. Kiesling.
Yes.
Soretta.
Yes.
All right, 7 members. We are adjourned from executive session. Now I need a motion and a second to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, folks. You're probably good to go now. You can go down there now.
You think?
I have to wait until the 21st, but you guys can go down there to get certified. You need to get your form.
My election? Well, I already filed. I filed today.
What's that?
Post,